What's your name?
My name's Hilary Taylor.
Hilary, are you ready to tell us what you're building and receive some feedback?
I am.
You have a minute. What are you building?
The number one obstacle to electric vehicle adoption is low charger downtime. At WattsUp, we're addressing this obstacle with our predictive maintenance software solution for charging site operators and charging hardware manufacturers. Today, these companies lack the tools and resources needed to ensure high charger uptime. And this has resulted in 1/3 of electric vehicles being non-functional at any given time. WattsUp is a full-service software solution that monitors EV chargers, gathers and analyzes real-time performance data, and predicts failure. Upon prediction of the failure, we connect our customer with skilled and certified technicians to fix it. We are a team of hardware and software engineers with a combined 25 years building and selling EV charging solutions. We're going after a $1 billion...
That's a minute.
Great job. I think that was very comprehensive.
That was very good. What's the... there's an EV charging startup. Name them so that I remember which one I'm thinking of.
Electric Fish. There's so many.
ChargePoint.
It's not a startup.
Oh, it's a big company, right?
They're a big player
is it
now.
Legacy?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I know someone who was a senior engineering leader at ChargePoint, was a client. So I learned a lot about this space. In fact, his role as an engineering leader. So I have like a lot of sympathy for this. Funnily enough, I think that's probably made me a little bit infected. His entire role was analytics because of failure rates and because of like the network of ChargePoint stations and all this other stuff being very complicated, hard to keep up, hard to maintain. That was, as a senior engineering leader, he built a platform for them just to deal with it within their systems. So I'm very sympathetic to this. And I think you hit, for me, as someone who's heard this story even a little bit, I go, okay, yeah, all of that checks out. And I have questions as to like your specific solutions.
Right.
Shall we dig in more, or do you want to say anything first?
Well, I think the feedback was very good presentation, but you can slow down.
Okay.
I think it was a lot coming at me. Because there's a lot to be said. You can probably simplify it a little bit. But I also like understand that it's kind of hard to be on stage. So I'm sure that comes with practice. Yes. But just slowing down and just taking a breath, I think can give you a little bit more, what's the right word?
Pace.
Fair, yeah.
So let's dig in a little bit. You know, one of the things I'm immediately curious about, and we'll see if this is like something I want you to include in your pitch. So you're doing, you know, kind of predictive maintenance on top of this. Does that mean you're essentially a marketplace where like you're generating the transaction through that predictive maintenance?
That's the goal.
So do you fall into an issue of like, I guess, let me ask this differently.
Sure.
Should you be SaaS instead and sell them just like the data of like, here's how your charging stations are doing, here's when to know you should call somebody? Because it sounds like you're handling that for them.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we're finding, especially through a lot of customer discovery calls, is a big bottleneck is the charge site operator not even knowing there's a problem. We've had calls where we have them log on to their dashboard for the first time and they're like, oh my God, we have a 50% down rate on our chargers. So it's a bigger issue of, I think, just the charge site operators not being the fundamental expert user. And they're also not interested. You know, some charge site operators will have chargers at multifamily apartments and stuff. They're more interested in that. So if we can automate this, right, and remove them from the equation, we remove the bottleneck. And typically they're fine with that because they don't want to worry about it anyway.
Can you maybe talk to the structure of the ownership of the charging points? Like, is it the company that owns it, or is it like kind of like a gas station where you have like individual people that own that gas station, they just buy gas from?
Or sometimes, in some cases, I guess, network that might
both.
own it?
It can happen both ways. So sometimes the charging manufacturer, and this is who we're actually piloting with later this year, sometimes they own and operate the hardware as well. Sometimes the charging manufacturer will sell the hardware, and that is owned and operated by a charge site operator. Those are the two distinctions.
Who are you targeting first then?
Both right now. We have had more traction with the hardware side because they want to differentiate themselves from the rest of the players in the field. And there's a lot of them being born right now, charging hardware startups.
So should you focus on that point then?
we are very young, but maybe this is the cue to focus. Yeah.
You had a stat there, 1/3 of EVs being non-operational. Did you mean charging stations or literal EVs?
Charging stations. Sorry. Okay. Yep.
Because I was going to ask, wow, does the lack of charging stations
EV
being
chargers.
operational? This is the interesting point that I think, to Matt's question is, who has the incentive to most want to engage and also want to engage in your particular solution? And I do think, actually, in addition to the pitch, you could use pace. The other thing it could use is probably context as to why you think either of these markets could work. And I actually think there are successful early stage pitches that do say, hey, here are two things we're targeting, and here's why both could be interesting. Here's who we're going with first as an exploration of our market.
Well, let me ask you, what's your hypothesis about the company?
About the company?
Yeah.
The hypothesis is that traditional workflows with EV charging maintenance are way too manual and reactive.
I like that pitch.
The one-liners are coming later in these cases. It does bring me to something, which is like, is that permanently a problem? Let me ask this question differently. Something going on in my head while you two have been chatting is like, do the chargers get more sophisticated? Do the operations around these things get so sophisticated that you become, maybe you're relevant for a few years, but then you become, for a good reason in terms of charging manufacturers, irrelevant when these become more reliable or they come with their own kind of maintenance tooling?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Maybe I'm biased because I come from 10 years of actually building the charger. They're very reliable when they launch, but they require a certain knowledge from the site operator around preventative maintenance and upkeep. So I think that this is going to be... Why? Because they are very complex, especially when it comes to a DC fast charger. It's a very complex piece of hardware.
Did you realize she had built these for 10 years, by the way?
No.
Did you say that in your initial pitch?
I said 25 years combined building and selling.
I don't like those combined team stats because they always make 70 years doing this. I think you saying you have done it for 10 years is way better than that. That you can feel it, right? That brought me to a lot of credibility as to you saying this is a problem and is a real problem that'll last.
But I think what you two are talking about is you might, in a conversation, you might think that these chargers are just so sophisticated they would work. And they do, they're great. But it's not about them, it's about the people that operate them.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think that's kind of how you drive the point home. Yeah. Right? Because I think that you...
Like the point you made that they're worried about something else in a multifamily is a great point.
And now that I think about it, your initial pitch felt like you were reading a paragraph over your website.
Okay.
Fair. And I think this, when we're having a conversation and you can drive the point home about your experience, how sophisticated yet unreliable these are, I think can make it much more tangible. Because now I'm oh yeah, I remember even when you go to a gas station to fill up a car, how often those pumps don't work. Right?
But it's making me only want that side of the business. I know you're saying you're having this early test with a manufacturer, and obviously you come from that space, so you probably have credibility in that space. But now that we're talking about this, the visceral and emotional and sticky part of this problem feels like it's with the operators who are not the manufacturers.
It's true.
And it makes me want you to focus entirely on them. And this is the hard part when it's a business like this. I'm just going to tell it to you as you know it, right? Because you probably feel this every day. That question I asked you of, is this a problem forever? That's the thing you almost want to wrestle with, and it can compete with your early product market fit. So your early product market fit might be with these manufacturers who are giving you access and money and saying, yeah, we want a deal because this makes sense for us. But your true product market fit in that longer term, the vision of the company longer term might be to say, if you hypothesize as Hilary, if you say, I believe that charge point operators will continue to exist, these will not always be owned and will most of the time not be owned by manufacturers. And all of these people have other incentives, therefore will be distracted. I will always have a customer.
Yeah.
And that feels like a reasonable thesis.
But that goes back to one of the earlier conversations, what's the vision of the world that you have, right? And how can we see what that is?
Yeah, if you tell that story, I think that would be a great way to start the conversation.
Okay.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you.